Tuesday at 9 on ITV.
OK, mate, we're ready.
Boon.
Oh, good.
Bravo.
The double dealers are being double dealt.
Harry, they've gone for it.
Get out of it. Get back en route. I'll phone the police.
My blood's drying.
Drive!
A right old muddle. Boon, Tuesday at 9 on ITV.
I demand more, even from an aftershave. Here's one that smells great and takes care of my skin. Old Spice Hyrogel. It's an aftershave and moisturizer in one, forming an amazing new gel. Light, easily absorbed. Refreshing. It smells great and leaves my skin feeling incredibly smooth. Does your aftershave do that?
New Old Spice Hydrogel, the freshest idea for smoother skin.
Look at the milk!
Sorry, love, no milk.
You need a coffee.
Oh, lovely.
Coffee, mate.
Oh, haven't you got any milk? Not sure I'm going to like this.
It's always a first time.
Nice. Very nice. I could get used to this.
I bet you could.
Coffee-Mate. However you discovered it, you'll be glad you did.
Any chance of another cup?
A prostitute and her missing daughter.
You're dead, Jim Tracy, love.
A grim discovery.
Come on then, Doc. Time of death.
And a brutal murder.
Quite a busy period for you, Inspector.
Yes, so far this week I'm averaging a body a day. I've already got one medal. I don't need another.
David Jason stars in A Touch of Frost, coming soon on ITV.
From the headquarters of ITN, News at 10, with Trevor MacDonald.
Britain seeks backing for Euro spending package. Debate rages over who pays for the Windsor fire. Commons anger over Iraqgate and new evidence of arms sales. And customs break a record with a ton of cocaine. Good evening. Britain launched a new initiative today to get Europe to spend its way out of recession. But as Mr. Major lobbied for support in Brussels, he faced a new row over the EC rebates negotiated by Mrs. Thatcher. Other European leaders were told in no uncertain terms that the rebates to Britain were sacrosanct. The Germans said that if that was the British position, they may all as well go home. Our Europe correspondent Libby Wiener has the report.
The Prime Minister, meeting his Belgium counterpart tonight, is trying to lay the ground for next month's Edinburgh summit. Britain's EC presidency is facing growing criticism elsewhere in Europe. John Major left without commenting on that this evening.
He's been a bit of a failure.
But across town in Brussels at the EC Finance Ministers' meeting, his Chancellor Norman Lamont was launching a major new initiative on growth within the community. The plan, which is in line with what much of Jacques Delors has been urging, would mean a huge new public borrowing package. The Chancellor says it's a joint initiative and insists not a U-turn on British economic policy.
It isn't interventionist, it isn't a U-turn, it is thoroughly in keeping with the sorts of things we have been doing at home. All I've been saying is, look, let's recognise the problem. Why doesn't Europe do some of the things similar to those we have done in our own autumn statement? Why don't individual countries do something similar to the things we've done in our own autumn statement?
But tonight, Britain is facing another clash with its partners, including Germany, over its EC budget rebate. Many say it can't continue.
I don't like to accept a dictate. Just saying there will be only a settlement on the Law 2 if you accept the rules as described by Britain. I mean, that's not the way in which we want to handle the issue.
The Chancellor insists he's been planning this growth initiative for some time. But it's clear the British government has been stung by criticism of its presidency of the EC, and it's determined that the Edinburgh summit at least should be seen as a success. Libby Wiener, News at 10, Brussels.
The Heritage Secretary Peter Brook confirmed today that the taxpayer will foot the bill for repairs to Windsor Castle. He said the castle was the property of the state and the government's responsibility. There were calls from the opposition for the Queen to make a contribution. A senior fire officer said today the report on the cause of the fire won't be ready for at least 48 hours. Then he said the royal household will decide if it's to be made public. ITN's Colin Baker reports.
The total repair cost hasn't been worked out yet, but the government's in no doubt who's going to foot the Windsor bill. They are.
I therefore have no hesitation in saying that resources will be provided to restore this most precious and well-loved part of our national heritage.
One Tory backbencher suggested a bill of £60 million would only be just over £1 per head of population, and he knew of no one who could object to that. But he did when Labour's Anne Clwyd rose.
There is legitimate public concern that the total cost of repair should not be paid exclusively by the taxpayer.
Dennis Skinner had a call from a constituent whose house caught fire last Friday.
Can you ask a government minister to stand up at the dispatch box, she said, and tell them that they're going to pay my bill as well as the Queen's? I think it's utterly wrong.
It's emerged that a sideboard, a carpet and a painting have been totally destroyed. The Queen will bear those costs. Government money will be for repairs to the structure only. Here in Windsor, during the day, there have been the inevitable discussions about who should pay. Local traders whose livelihoods depend on tourism believe that the government ought to write the cheque. But there is a very strong opposing view by the general public. A straw poll of morning shoppers in Windsor found about 4-1 in favour of the Queen being given at least part of the bill.
She doesn't pay any tax. Why should we pay? Government don't pay, we pay.
No, I feel that half and half. The Queen should go half and the country should go half.
Who do you think should pay for the restoration?
Not the public.
I've got very mixed feelings, I don't know. Perhaps if some sort of compromise was to come between the two, then that might make everybody happy.
We all feel that we've all lost something very great here. We all gain from having the castle here, and we feel we should all put in to help pay for it, the restoration.
English Heritage will advise on the restoration, but so far the dangerous conditions in the castle have prevented anyone from assessing the full extent of the damage.
I am hoping that the archaeological team from the Central Excavation Unit of English Heritage will be able to start moving about in the wreckage very shortly, certainly by the end of the week, and they will begin to form a view as to their best strategy.
Prince Philip spent much of the day at the castle as the cause of the fire became the focal point of investigation. Reports that flammable paint solvent ignited and spread have now been dismissed as without foundation. Colin Baker, News at 10, Windsor.
A new opinion poll on the future of the monarchy suggests that the majority of people believe the royal family should find ways to cut costs. More details of the Harris poll, commissioned by News at 10 and carried out before the Windsor Castle fire, in our Focus on Britain a little later in this programme. The Matrix Churchill trial and the whole arms to Iraq affair were debated furiously in the Commons this evening. Robin Cook for Labour said ministers had misled the House, deceived the public and tried to muzzle the courts. Michael Heseltine for the government accused Labour of hypocrisy. And ITN learned today that British intelligence was kept informed of the activities of another British company supplying the Iraqi military. Our political editor, Michael Brunson, reports.
After hours of poring over the Matrix Churchill documents, Robin Cook finally came face to face with Michael Heseltine to put to him the main charge, that prior to the Gulf War, the government had knowingly helped to arm Saddam Hussein.
Having gone through the documents, what impresses me is not the cynicism of ministers in their decisions, but their stark naivety that they could arm a brutal, unstable dictator and that he would not then use the arms with which he was provided.
Michael Heseltine's case was equally robust, that the guidelines on sales to Iraq had always required judgment from ministers in applying them.
In interpreting policy guidelines, judgments had to be made about British contracts for British factories offering British jobs in circumstances where other people in other nations were queuing up to fill these orders if we didn't.
But as to the details, for example, the case unearthed by ITN today of the shipment of fuses for shells by a British firm in 1986, there was little in the Commons. This latest case involves a company called Allivane. This was their headquarters near Glasgow. The firm went bust in 1989. Allivane was involved as a subcontractor in this secret deal for a full-scale munitions assembly line, apparently masterminded by British engineer Stuart Blackledge. A deal struck during meetings here at the Iraqi embassy in Bonn. Nor did the Commons debate today focus much on the Prime Minister's role. In a reply to Paddy Ashdown today about whether he knew that guidelines had been changed in 1988, Mr Major said, "I was not a party to those decisions and I had no reason to know about them." In the Commons, Mr Heseltine, closely questioned by Neil Kinnock, refused to say whether he knew that the Matrix Churchill defendants could have ended up in jail, and after a sticky patch, he resorted, as usual, to an out-and-out attack on the opposition, accusing Robin Cook of impugning the integrity of Lord Justice Scott.
Does the honourable member believe that Lord Justice Scott would allow his independence to be compromised by negotiations with government? That is the issue.
Then why does he not accept the challenge I posed to him a moment ago and make this a tribunal of inquiry so it takes place in public and we see what they have got to hide?
There is, Mr Deputy Speaker, a nauseating hypocrisy that has flavoured the remarks and the behaviour of the party opposite.
And that about sums things up. Far more heat than light.
Mike, has the debate put all the charges over this affair to rest now?
Trevor, I don't think it has, and I have some late news to give you. This is a letter which I've just got hold of. It's a reply by the Prime Minister to Tam Dalyell, and he says in it that he first became aware of the investigations into Matrix Churchill in October 1990. That was when he was Chancellor. He also goes on to say that I did see a copy of a minute about the Matrix Churchill affair, that was after the invasion, in August 1990. Now, the impression so far from the Prime Minister is he didn't really know much about this until a conversation with Alan Clark fairly recently. Now, one has to be careful. One needs to go into this in very much more detail than I've been able to, but certainly this is an example of a way this thing, I think, is going to go on bubbling.
Mike, thank you very much indeed. The first effect of the pound's devaluation showed up in a wider trade gap last month. Exports were up, but the cost of imports was up more. The deficit was £1,063 million, 170 million more than in September. Labour said we were heading for a deficit for the year unheard of in a recession. And Barclays Bank announced today that 3,000 jobs will go, on top of the 15,000 already going. The unions at Ford's decided to ballot their members in industrial action over threatened redundancies as soon as possible. But tomorrow's London Underground strike is off. Armed police, customs officers and, it said, members of the Special Boat Squadron boarded a ship on the Thames today, arrested 6 men and seized a tonne of cocaine. It would have been worth £166 million on the street. ITN's Paul Davies has the details.
After months of surveillance tracking a huge consignment of cocaine from South America, armed police and customs officers moved into London's Dockland this morning. The oil rig supply vessel Foxtrot 5, moored at Woolwich Reach, was their first target. Witnesses believed they were watching the shooting of a film sequence as inflatable dinghies packed with armed officers moved against the boat.
The men in the inflatables were wearing black gear, probably life jackets, and black balaclavas, and carrying short, stubby, looked like to me like machine guns, but it may be the army rifle. And they swept round very high speed, tied themselves up to the far side of the boat, Foxtrot 5, and clambered aboard with their guns.
While part of the operation was concentrated on the riverside, another police team had followed a vehicle from the supply ship to this lock-up garage. A bulldozer was used to force entry. Inside, officers discovered the van they'd been following and part of the consignment of drugs. In all, a tonne of high-quality South American cocaine was seized, with a street value of £160 million. Police say 6 men have been arrested in the Docklands area. A major drugs ring has suffered a severe setback. Police and Customs are celebrating not only the size of their success, though, but the happy coincidence that this find comes as the government is launching a new campaign to keep drugs away from young people in Britain. Paul Davis, News at 10 on the River Thames.
And coming next on News at 10 tonight, more of the day's news, including how staff at a special school ill-treated autistic children and made them eat regurgitated food. The future of the monarchy. A poll for News at 10 suggests 3 out of 4 people want cuts in the costs of the royal family. And the neo-Nazis killed 3 Turks in Germany, how their membership is now growing.
Why are these videos so complicated? Do they think we're all qualified astronauts? User-friendly video. What's it do? Does it shake me warmly by the hand?
No, sir. The new Amstrad user-friendly video is so easy to use. Just set the channel, set the clock, press send, and you're all set for same-day timed recordings.
In fact, if you can't use it in 5 minutes, get your money back.
Oh, take it. Good grief.
Just £249.99. The new user-friendly video from Amstrad.
It's so thin, really thin.
Dawn Parsons has discovered new, super-thin, always ultra towels.
It really did work. It was absolutely incredible.
Thinner than any conventional towel, Always has a one-way dry weave top sheet which draws virtually everything into the towel. And an absorbent lock-away core which helps keep it there so the surface stays fresh and dry.
I even wore it to my Keep Fit class, which shows how confident I was with it.
Thinner than any conventional towel, yet always fresher, always drier.
So Percival gets the grease off and grips the grease in the water so it can't get back on the plate.
How absolutely fascinating, Norman.
Question. Do you have any complaints about Midland?
It would be nicer if they were a bit more sympathetic with the needs.